Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a tips and tricks video for Rainbow Six Siege with random tips for new players or those that have been playing for a while but don't consider themselves pro. A collection of hopefully interesting and useful tips for various different operators that will be useful for your gameplay and create some interesting mayhem. In the first of these, I'm using Goyo's fire shield combined with Kapkan's door traps to create explosive effect. Essentially what you need to do for this is to find a Kapkan trap that is the right level, which is basically the top of the shield. So deploy your shield in the doorway, and then when an enemy jumps over that, they'll set off the Kapkan trap, which then sets off the Goyo trap, creating a fiery death for the enemy. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's pretty hilarious, and it's also not expected most of the time. So create some pretty interesting mayhem. Just beware not to put the Kapkan trap too low on the door frame or it won't work. It has to be at the right height. And that's another quick tip, is that when you are playing as Kapkan, if you crouch or look up, you can put the Kapkan traps in different positions. So rather than always being in the middle of the door where they're a bit more obvious, you can put them at foot level, and that will then help you to kill the enemy because they won't be suspecting looking down. And here's a tip with how to deal with Maestro's cameras with the gun emplacements and Mirror's one-way mirror system. Both of these have been updated recently so that they can be damaged so that the enemy can't use them, which is very useful for attackers, as it means you can stop the enemy from seeing where you are and getting the upper hand on you. So you'll see there are two mirror emplacements on this wall, and we're just doing this in a custom game to demonstrate, but it just a melee is enough to smash it from one side so then you can't see through it. This obviously renders it useless. This same logic works on Maestro's cameras, so you can damage the external camera, but Sledge's hammer also is capable of completely destroying these guns even when they're not open. Usually you have to wait for the gun to be open and then shoot it in order to get rid of it. But you can go up to it and simply melee it so it's not possible to see out of it. And then when it opens up, you can just completely destroy it and make it useless. This is obviously beneficial if the enemy can't see you. Now here's a trick for using Capital. You'll find reinforced walls obviously about the place, but you can shoot out the top of them. If this is outside the objective, this is quite useful because if you can just shoot out a little bit of the top of it, I'm demonstrating just how much you can shoot out, you can then fire your fire arrows into the room, which potentially deals with anybody hiding inside. Any campers, anyone in there defending the objective will either get burnt to death or at least flushed out of their position. This next tip is for Jackal and Kavira. Now Kav's ability allows her to move silently around the map. Jackal's allows him to scan enemy footprints and work out where they are. You can see that Cav's been running around in that little area and see different colours of footprints depending on how recent the footstep is. But once Cav's ability is activated, as it is now, she is no longer visible. Her footprints aren't visible. When you then scan the footprints, that usually pings where the enemy are to let you know their location. If Cav activates her ability and runs off, that marker does not go with her and doesn't show you where she is. And therefore, Cav's ability is actually really useful to counter Jackal, which isn't immediately obvious, but it is useful. You can see when it runs out, the marker reappears in a different location as well, which is pretty interesting. And this also works in a similar way with Lion. So Lion's drone scan usually means that operators can't move around without being detected. However, Cav can activate her stealth ability and then move around without being spotted by Lion's ability. As long as it's activated during the scan before she moves, that'll prevent any problems. This next one is a tip for Zero's cameras. You can use Zero's cameras to shoot through soft surfaces, but reinforced walls you can't go through. However, you will find there are some reinforced walls where the very top isn't quite reinforced properly. You'll also note on the camera gun that there are two little arrows at the top and bottom. As long as both of them appear, this will allow the camera to go through and give you a visibility of both areas. Another tip here is for Valkyrie's cameras. Try and place them in spots that aren't terribly obvious. You can see my friend Henry Deadman here has put one in a light source where the light shining on it so brightly it'll be really difficult for the enemy to see. The next tip is buried in your control settings. As default, this isn't on, but you can set to have a walk mode. This enables you to walk really slowly and quietly and to move around a lot more stealthily, which is obviously very useful if you're on your own. If you go into customize controls, you'll find you can set up a button there. There isn't one set as default. I set mine to T, but you could assign it to a mouse button or something else. And then that allows you to then move around really quietly when you're on your own and you're in danger. So it's very, very useful. The next tip is how to deal with Clash. I've seen a lot of players panic when someone is using Clash and not know what to do, so they just run off because of her ability, which zaps you and slows you down and makes it very difficult for you to move. It also does some damage. A good way to counter her is simply go up and melee her. Doing that knocks her shield off guard, and then you can shoot or stab her. It's a bit tricky, but she is quite vulnerable in this position. If you use Thatcher's EMP grenades, you can also prevent her shield from working, so she could no longer zap, which is obviously a very useful way to deal with her, or at least make her less dangerous. Another thing that you might have seen players do is to use Mirror's shields. The Mirror has a deployable one-way mirror system that she can put on walls, soft walls and hard reinforced walls, but also just holding it allows her to use it as a mini shield. She can't shoot back while using it, but you might see players trying to be sneaky hiding in a corner with this, or alternatively it's an interesting way to create some hilarity. The next tip is for Mute. Mute's jammers are obviously useful for stopping drones from finding the objective. They can also be used when placed against hard walls to stop some hard breaches from working. But another thing I discovered that's useful is that it'll work against Dockerby's ability. So Dockerby has an ability where she can call all the defenders' cell phones, and those phones will ring and then alert the enemy where your position is, because they're making a noise constantly, so you can't hide, so you need to turn them off. There's a counter to this if you're using Mute. You simply need to stand near a Mute jammer. You can see in the bottom of the screen next to your health bar, there's a little blue indicator when you're in range of the EMP jammer, and you can see that when Dockerby's using her ability, it doesn't do anything, and she can't then ring my phone, which is obviously very useful because it allows you to be a bit more stealthy. This same logic also works with Lion's drone scans. So you can see I've got some EMP jammers up in this little room, but here I'm out of the range of it, and when the scan's activated, obviously the Lion scan picks up where I am. However, when I'm in range of the jammer, that same scan will not detect me when I'm moving around. Usually you need to stand still. You can crouch and such, but you can't move side to side or around the map. But here you can see I'm in range of the jammer, and the drone scan's going off and it's not detecting me. This allows you to obviously move around more stealthily, obviously only within a small space, but if you've set up a few jammers in an area, then it will make it easy to move between those and not have to worry about being picked up by the enemy, and then you can sneak up on them and finish them off. Using operators' abilities in different ways can obviously create some hilarity and surprise the enemy. And these are like hidden little tricks. Now, castle doors are a pain. Usually you need Sledge's hammer, Ash's explosives, or a hard breach. But you can bash your way through them with enough melee, so that's pretty interesting. Another trick for using Zero's camera is that if you're on a map with wooden floors or ceilings, you can use the cameras to shoot through the floorboards and therefore see into the objective or other room. You can see here, we can see into the room below, which is the objective point. And once you've done that, you can then get your teammates to shoot through into the room and hopefully eliminate the enemy. They don't often suspect that there will be danger from above or below, and therefore it's fairly interesting and hilarious to be able to shoot at them and hopefully kill off a few before you even get to that location, which can be amusing. My final tip is on using Twitch drones. You'll see some people come into the objective with Twitch drones and try to zap the operators. This zap only takes 1 health off the enemy, and it really isn't worth doing. It's a waste of an ability. What Twitch should be doing with that drone is coming in and destroying anything that might be useful to the defenders, such as EMP jammers, ADS defenses, and anything else like that. Cameras, anything that might be useful. Don't waste it by zapping operators. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this Pews video hilarious. Expect more clips like this in the future from a variety of games where we will all be having fun. Big thanks to my teammates Sir Henry Deadman, Beaster Bunny, Space Cannons, Monkey Pie, and D, aka Moist Kebab.